Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to be trying to demonstrate how to do a linoleum relief printmaking, and these are the materials that you're gonna need. So this is my first print, that's why it's already carved and painted. That was just an example just to show you how it's gonna look in the end. Then the first thing you're gonna need is a roller. Basically you're gonna use that to roll the paint with. You'll see that later on in the video. I mean, it's kind of common sense how to use it, but you just roll it and then you roll it on your linoleum. And then the next thing you're gonna need is a plastic spatula, preferably plastic. It's a lot cheaper and easier to use with. And then you're gonna need tracing paper to trace your image and put it onto the linoleum. That's the paper you're gonna need. You're gonna trace it, and then later on in the video you'll see how that is all exactly done. You're then going to use the linoleum. This is a 6x9 piece. You can use any piece except, well, of course it's going to be bigger and it's going to take you a lot more time to carve, but that's basically how it looks like without carving or anything. And then you're going to use the rice paper pad. This is a 12x18. You're going to have to cut it to the size in order to get an exact fit and for it to not be unequal, but that's basically the paper that you're going to use to print on. And then that is the carving tool that you will use. There's different tips to use. That way you can get either a deeper cut or just a smaller cut. And I think I'm going to show you how to put it on. Oh yeah, okay. So that's basically how you put it on. You just twist off the cap, not all the way though, and you put it in there and you screw it back on, and then you just start to carve away. It is a little difficult to carve the very first time, but you eventually get the hang of it. And then next is a wooden spoon. This is used to press onto the linoleum. That way you can get all the paint onto the rice paper. And then, well, this is the ink that you use. It's called block printing ink, and I had it in the color green. It is kind of thick, so when you put it onto the area that you're going to paint, you do want to mix it. This is just a glass frame that I used, and I used this to basically put the paint on and to mix it on, and it makes it a lot easier to roll. This next tool is optional, but I highly recommend getting one because it does make it a lot easier to carve into the linoleum, because you'll see later on in the video how it exactly works, but it is a lot easier, so I highly recommend getting one. Those are basically the tips that you can use, and there's different sizes so you can make different cuts and things like that. And the goggles are basically just to protect your eyes from the dust of the linoleum. In this part of the video, you're basically going to see my tracing technique. I had already traced it, which is why I was already on a tracing paper, but you are going to use your printed image to trace that image onto your tracing paper. And this is basically what I'm doing here in the video. You also need to make sure to get enough detail from your actual image onto the tracing paper. That way, when you transfer it onto the linoleum, you'll be able to see what exactly you need to carve and all of the little details that you need to include in order to make your print look nice. While I do this, I'll be talking about the inspirations and similarities between a local artist called Scott Mincy. His work usually addresses around the universal theme of fear, regret, and longing. His prints are usually made with a network of wiry anatomical lines, subtle and twisted, which kind of correlate to my prints, mainly because we used contour lines to create and not just subtle outlines to create a more in-depth view with prints. And his work really does show that, because he creates a lot of variety of shapes just to create his work, which is really, really interesting. So basically the similarities between his art and mine are not many, but just the way he uses his contour lines to create a more in-depth view into his prints, which I kind of wanted to do with mine. In this next part, I will basically be demonstrating how to do the tracing technique, or my tracing technique. So first, you're going to grab some tape to tape down your tracing paper, you're going to want to use as much of the charcoal as you can to make it darker. That way your image can transfer a lot better onto the linoleum itself. Then here you'll see how I place it onto the linoleum and I tape it on. That way you're able to transfer the image onto the linoleum. This is basically what it's going to look like after you take off the tracing paper from the linoleum, and you're going to want to wipe it off. That way you can get all the excess charcoal off and you can see your image clearly. Then here you're going to use the carver that I showed in the beginning, showing all the tips again, and you're going to want to start carving. You're going to want to carve away from your hand, so you're going to have to position yourself. This is how my print looks after finishing carving and everything, and I'm going to show you a little bit how to carve, or the finishing touches on my print. And that was basically just carving out the numbers. It is quite difficult to do numbers since they are backwards. You also have to remember to print your image backwards if you do have any letters or numbers that you want to come out the correct way. You also want to make sure to use contour lines instead of actually outlining. That way it creates a more in-depth type of print instead of just seeing an outline of an image. In this next step, you're going to see the inking process. So you're going to want to get a good amount of ink onto the glass frame. That way you won't have to be scooping over and over again. And then you're going to want to mix it. That way it's not the consistency that it is, as you can see here. It needs to be a more smooth consistency. And then you're going to grab a big old blob of it and you're going to scrape it like that, how you see. And then you're going to want to get your roller and you're going to start rolling. You're going to need to make sure that there isn't a lot of ink, as you can see here. And I accidentally stained the table, but that's okay. You're going to want to, if that happens, you want to take some of the ink off, because you don't want a lot of ink. Because if you do use a lot of ink, you're going to over ink your linoleum and your print isn't going to come out the way you want it, since it is going to have a whole lot of ink. Right here, you're going to see the amount of ink that should be on your roller and how it should look like. And then you're going to get your linoleum and you're going to start rolling. You might want to roll from the middle up and down, or side to side, like I'm doing it here. You also want to maybe not do it on a surface that you don't want to get dirty. So also try not using your hand like I did, because you will stain yourself a lot. But it's the way you can get all the edges and everything like that. And you're just going to keep putting on ink until you think that it's the good amount of the good amount of ink on your print. Now that your linoleum is full of ink, you're going to want to get your rice paper and make sure it's on the rough side and not the smooth side. And you're going to want to flip it over and place it right in the middle of the rice paper. Make sure it's right in the middle, that way you have a good print. Then you're going to want to flip it with your hand, just like how I'm doing here. Make sure your hands are also clean, that way there are no... Then you're finally going to peel it off and see the result. And as you can see here, I do not have enough ink, so I'm going to have to do it again just to show you. As I'm doing here, you're going to want to do it again, the inking process. Make sure to peel carefully, that way you don't... Your first try isn't going to always come out perfect, as you can see with mine, but it is a start. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.